Thank you everyone for attending tonight. I'm very happy that you decided to take this time to listen to me speak for the next 45 minutes or so. And I want to thank everyone at the Allen County Public Library and the Genealogy Center for inviting the Library of Michigan and who sent me virtually here to you. When I'm speaking, I will probably lapse into LM, standing for Library of Michigan. So if I do say LM, just know that's the Library of Michigan. And just one quick extra thing I want to mention in the biography is that, I've been at the library for 7+ years, and I've usually give the presentations in person. So this is kind of new for me. So it is an excellent learning experience. So today, I have a few goals for us. I want to help familiarize you with some of our online resources that we have at the Library of Michigan, what some of the access policies are to view those online resources. I also want to speak to you about some of the print resources that we have in our collections, because at the end of the presentation, I hope to inspire you that when we do reopen to the public, that you might want to plan a research trip to us and to take a visit and see what we have to offer. So what is the Library of Michigan? Well, it is the institution created to collect, preserve, and provide access to the story of Michigan. And we have 3 service population groups that the librarians here at the Library of Michigan help. We serve the public, we serve Michigan libraries, and we serve state employees, whether they're the state employees, the legislature, or in the governor's office. Now, the Library of Michigan started out in 1828 as a territorial library. And back during that time, we had about 130 items, some of the oldest going back to about 1805. And we are one of the oldest continually functioning departments within state government. And then in 1837, it's yay for statehood, and we became the Michigan State Library. And then, as you can imagine, we packed our bags in a couple of carts or wagons, and then we moved in 1847 from Detroit to Lansing. And I just cannot imagine that trip from Detroit over here. On a good day now over the expressways, we're talking an hour and 15 maybe depending on how much of a lead foot you have. And that had been an interesting journey. But we made it here to Lansing in 1847. Now, between the late 1860s and the 1950s, there are 3 key librarians that I want to quickly mention, because these 3 women were really important in helping shape what will become the Library of Michigan and get us here to what we have today. So in the late 1860s, there is Harriet Tenney, and she's really important because she is the person who helped open the collection to the public. Before her, it was only, our collections were only available to state workers and the legislature. With her, it opened to the public, and then our collection policies began to change, and we started taking the material that citizens could come in and use the collections for history research and also later on family history research. She was also instrumental in creating the pioneer societies in Michigan, and then later on the State Museum. I'm going to come back to the Pioneer Society after a little bit. The next important person is Mary Spencer in the early 20th century. She's important because she really brought the library, the state library, to the people. She helped institute statewide services, particularly training for local public libraries so that they could better serve their local communities. And also, she helped create traveling libraries, so taking parts of our collection out to those locations that had no or very limited library availability. And as the donation coordinator at the Library of Michigan, this is really a fun part for me, because about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, one of our traveling library books came back to us through a donation. And, it was a general fiction book, but in the front cover, it had the wonderful plate in there that said it was part of our traveling library. It was part of the traveling library in the early teens, the early 19 teens. So it was fun getting that item back to us. And the last person want to mention here is Lolita Fayan, and she's important because she helped oversee the beginnings of state and federal funding for public libraries in Michigan. So these three women really got us going on the path to where we are today. Then in 1983, we become the Library of Michigan, and then that really helps to lessen the confusion between the Michigan State Library, who we were, and Michigan State University Library. Because, you know, even today, when I'm on the reference desk, from time to time, we'll get some questions on confusion of which place the patron wants to actually speak with. And then finally, in 1988, we moved into our new building, which is that picture there at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. The Library of Michigan occupies the left-hand side, which is the west side of the building. And on the right-hand side, there are a few other state offices. This image in front of you is our picture of the atrium in our building. And the Library of Michigan occupies the full second floor, most of the third floor, the fourth floor, and most of the fifth floor. Now, I think this image here is wonderful because, you know, it's a great building to work in, and it's a great building for researchers to come and to use when they are researching Michigan history, family history, and you name it. What's also really good about our building is it really is a one-stop shop, because the library is on the left-hand side of the building, but on the right-hand side, the east side of the building, is the State Archives and the State Museum. So you can get a lot of research done when you visit our building. And hopefully this picture here will at least hopefully encourage maybe some future planning of visits to our facility. So what kind of collections do we have here at the Library of Michigan? Well, there are 4 primary collections that we have, and as you can imagine, they mostly focus on Michigan. I would say maybe about 98, 97% of our collections focus on Michigan. So first, we have the Michigan Documents Collection. It is our mandated by law collection. So any state department, agency, commission, or work group that publishes some type of document or brochure or poster or map, they're supposed to give us a copy. So we have one in perpetuity for residents and other researchers to have access to. And they can be things, as you see in the slide: joint documents, compiled laws, rules, annual reports, and many other things. There is the Michigan Collection, which, as you can imagine, there's newspapers, there's periodicals, county and place histories, cemetery transcriptions. It's both commercially and privately published material, and also sometimes unpublished material that we can get our hands on through donations. We have the State Law Collection, and we have the Martha W. Griffiths Michigan Rare Book Room. Where should one start if one wants to do some research at the Library of Michigan through online collections or to see what we have? Well, probably the best place to start is going to be our website. And as you can see on the image in front of you, our web address is www.michigan.gov/libraryofmichigan.gov. That image below is a quick snapshot of the landing page for our website. And for those of you interested in knowing about our current status, we are currently closed to the public, but that little top informational bar is there. And please periodically check back, because our most current information will be placed there. I want to point out a few other things. Remember at the beginning of the presentation, I briefly mentioned our 3 service population groups. Well, those 3 tabs towards the top for the public, for libraries, and for state employees are right there. So I'll talk a little bit more about for the public later on. At this main page of the website, you can access our catalog, which is that little small box towards the bottom of your screen. You can do some basic keyword, author, and title searches, and that will get you to our catalog. And we have about, I would say, a good 98% of our catalog, of our materials cataloged. You know, there are some stray federal documents and some stray state documents that may not be cataloged. But if you don't want to get to our catalog through the website, you can always go to a search engine and in the internet browser, type in answercat.org. And that will get you to our catalog, which should look like this. And it's a typical catalog. You can search by keyword, author, and title. But you also have advanced search towards the bottom. You can search by call number, or you can also narrow by location, such as the law library or the rare materials collection. You can also see materials in the archives of Michigan. I want to point out that we have a shared catalog, and you will also see items from Michigan State University in our catalog. We are currently undergoing not a migration just yet, but we're going to be moving to a new catalog system sometime next year. And so some things may function a little bit differently, but what you see should be exactly what you should get once that final movement is completed. The only big difference is that you should only be able to see the Library of Michigan items and the Archives of Michigan items, and the Michigan State University items should be filtered out. This is just a sample catalog record, just to kind of give you an idea of what you should expect to see when you're using the catalog, because I firmly believe to make this catalog your friend. So, in the center, you can see the location and call number and status. So under location, you can see, oh, there's a MSU Map Lib Atlas stand, an MSU Map Lib Supersize Atlas. So it's going to tell you where it's at the Library of Michigan, such as Lib of Mich, and its collection, Michigan, 2 representing the floor, and N representing north, because that atrium is the dividing line, north and south. And then the call number for location, and then its status. The few other things I want to point out here is below that catalog location call number information, there may appear some notes fields in this record. And I think they're very important to look at when you're searching the catalog for different materials on family history. Because let's say, for example, you're looking at a county history from the 1890s. If perchance there was a person or maybe a historical organization that made a companion volume or an index that came much later or afterwards, in those note fields, there might be a record or indication to please see also this item. Those note fields also become important when you're looking for newspaper titles, because in those note fields, you should be able to see the previous name of a newspaper or its next in line name for the newspaper, because newspaper searching can get tricky because some of these newspapers really do change names quickly and you need to figure out how to keep track of it. So besides the catalog, what other online resources do we have for researchers? Well, if you remember, we have the For the Public tab, and if we click on it, we're going to get different content blocks like family history, newspapers, notable books, which are one of our signature programs, when we honor 20 titles about Michigan or books from Michigan authors. Also the rare books, government information, and get a library card. So this is a kind of a shout out to all those Michigan residents who are out there. Our online resources are available through a library. Most of our online resources, I should say, are available through a Library of Michigan library card. And to get a Library of Michigan library card, you need to be a resident of Michigan. So under For the Public, there's a content block that talks about that and how to get a library card if you're a Michigan resident. But if we were to click on that family history content block, that's the best way to access some of our online resources. So I'm going to go through a few of them briefly right now. So under family history and family history databases, you're going to see some of our newspaper databases that we have access to, such as Detroit Free Press, 1831 to 1999, the Newspaper Archive database, which covers many cities around Michigan, mostly smaller cities. And the newspapers covered within it are mostly smaller run newspapers. They might not be full runs, but hopefully a decent amount. And what I like about that particular database, Newspaper Archives, is you can click on the map on Michigan, and then you'll see a list of cities. And then within the list of cities, if you click on a city, you'll see a list of the newspapers being offered. We have access to newspapers.com. Again, it's the library edition. I think it's the World Library Edition, I think. But there are some Michigan newspapers within that subscription that we have. And then the Michigan Chronicle, which covers 1939 to 2010, and that's the leading Michigan African-American newspaper covering history, culture, arts, and so forth. Now, inside the building, internal access, we do have access to the Detroit newspaper from roughly 1872 to 1999. So for any kind of research in the Detroit area, I always recommend to researchers definitely look at both the Free Press and the News, because I have seen stories be covered in one newspaper and not the other. So definitely look at both of those papers. But those online subscriptions are not all of our newspaper access, because we have a lot on microfilm. We've got about 70,000 plus reels of Michigan newspapers on film. And there are 3 easy ways to look at our holdings. I already mentioned the catalog, which is very good using the name, but you can see what we do have on microfilm through the county listings and the family trees. So if you're clicking on the newspaper content block, you should see an image that sort of looks like the image on the screen in front of you. And then you will see the 2 links, or the couple links on the left-hand side, the family histories, and then that newspapers on microfilm at LM. And if one were to click on that, you will see a county listing, an alphabetical county listing, and I just took a quick, snapshot of the county listing. So you'd have to know the county you're interested in looking at our newspaper coverage. And you click on the county. And if I were to click on Ingham, which is where I'm at right now, up near Lansing, and it will then give you an alphabetical list of cities within the county, and then an alphabetical list of the papers underneath a particular city. So if we look towards the right of our screen and we see East Lansing, we also see East, right below it, East Lansing Town Courier from roughly 62 to 74. And then at the bottom, we see the Town Courier from 74 to 91. If you're looking at this section of our website and you see newspaper names that are close together and year coverage that are close together, it's a good bet that they're related newspapers. So again, definitely grab that title and look in our catalog to see what coverage we have. And then if you look above at the Dansville Herald, it says 1 year, 1888. If you see a single year, it really could mean that we have a full year coverage, maybe a couple months, or even 1 day, because a lot of the newspapers that we have filmed are from a large filming project a couple decades ago, and we only filmed what we had at the time. So again, take the names, go to the catalog, and search to see what we have, because they're the best instance or example that I can point to of using a newspaper name and going to the catalog is I helped a researcher a while back looking for obituaries in the Detroit papers. Now, lo and behold, there were 3 instances that I know of in the 60s where there was a strike and the papers weren't published. And this researcher was out of luck. She was not able to find an obituary because the papers weren't publishing during that time. So definitely definitely check the catalog to make sure that there's none of those unfortunate events happening. Now, besides the county listing, you can also look at the family histories. So if we click on that family histories link on that newspaper's content block, you're going to see a Michigan cities list, Michigan cities beginning with a letter of the alphabet. So if I were to click, for example, on L for Lansing, and if I were to go to the newspaper, I believe it's the Lansing Republican, in the city, I am going to see a newspaper family tree for that newspaper. Now, depending on the newspaper, some of the family trees only have a few blocks, and some are much more in depth. This was a project several decades ago by several different librarians to try to trace the history of newspapers, because it really is beneficial that we provide this information for researchers so that they know what newspaper they need to look in. So looking at the screen in front of you, you can see the Lansing Republican started out in 1855, and you can see the different editions, the mergers down towards the bottom, from the State Republican and the Lansing Journal to then the Lansing Journal Republican. The image in front of you is just the top portion of the first page of this family tree. There's a bottom portion, and I think there is a second page. Again, some newspapers have more detail and some don't, but we've undertaken this project to help researchers learn the names so they can go back to the catalog and find out what coverage we do have on film. Now, besides the newspapers, well, what other databases under that content block of family history databases do we have? As you might expect, we have access to Ancestry Library Edition. There is access to Fold 3, and I won't go into detail about those two because I think many of us have used those databases before, but I will mention if your research is venturing into more of like military record avenue, you definitely want to look at Fold 3. And if you have any questions of like what Fold 3 covers, definitely look at fold3.com just to get a good overview of what's there. Now, those two databases, again, are tied to your Library of Michigan library card, which is available to Michigan residents. But we also have access to MyHeritage Library Edition through mel.org. So if you're a Michigan resident who does not have a library card with us, but you are within Michigan and you have an internet service provider in Michigan, you can go to mel.org and access MyHeritage Library Edition. And I want to talk a little bit more about this resource because it's one of the big competitors for Ancestry. And if you have any questions about what the records it covers, definitely you can go to myheritage.com to get an overview, because I do know that they have individual subscriptions as well. So the way to access for those Michigan residents out there, you can go to the Michigan eLibrary, which is mel.org, and the entry page looks a little bit like this. And there's two components. There is a interlibrary loan component called MELCAT. You can borrow books from different libraries. And then there's an e-resource component, and that button towards the center top, e-resources, will get you to an alphabetical list of the many different databases that are available for Michigan residents, such as Fixing Your Car, different versions of Encyclopedia Britannica for college young adults, Health and Wellness Resource Center, MyHeritage Library Edition, and many more. But if we were to scroll through that alphabetical list and click on M and find MyHeritage Library Edition, and we click on it and we access it, well, that first search page looks a lot like this, with name and fields, year, place, keywords, and so forth. But what I want to point out for you is it looks suspiciously similar to Ancestry. and a little suspiciously similar to Heritage Quest. And I think that's very useful because the learning curve to use this database, it'll be easier to jump from one to another and then back and forth while you conduct your research, because I think it's important to use multiple family history databases like MyHeritage or Ancestry, together, so that you can really make sure that you're covering your bases. So a little bit more about MyHeritage to give you a little idea and sample here. It's 6 billion plus records, and it covers definitely North America and Europe, but also other nations throughout the world. And as many of us are familiar with, there are two different versions. There's a consumer version, and there is a library version as well. And as you might suspect, the library edition, you're not able to look at, or to build, I should say, family trees or receive matches or collaborate with family members. But for the most part, pretty high percentage, the material between the library edition and the consumer edition is the same. Besides using those search blocks, those search fields on the previous slide, I think it's also really useful to use the map feature at the bottom. So when you enter the database, you have those search fields, but towards the bottom, you have this map feature that you can narrow records by location. So you can click on a nation like the United States to filter out or to filter down to just those records, in addition to having the different search fields, the names, the dates, keywords, and so forth. Additionally, you can browse the collection catalog through the different categories that appear on the right-hand side of your search screens. When you're looking at the search fields, you have the different categories on the right, and that little picture on the right-hand side of the slide gives you an idea. There are categories such as census and voter lists, family trees, birth, marriage, and death, photos, military records, and a lot more. I'm going to say there's about maybe 24 different categories. So if you're looking at that category listing on the right-hand side, you'll notice, let's say at the bottom of census and voter lists, the little more button. So you can click on that more button and see more record groups within the large category. And in some of the record groups, like census and voter lists, you might then see the words show all, so that you can see the entire list of the different record groups, in addition to getting those search fields. So you can see all the different records. I think it is very useful when using this database, that if you're in a category or in a record group, let's say UK and Ireland census, or even a very specific record group itself, to look towards the top of the page, because you will probably see these little summary blocks or more information blocks. They're in a kind of like a tan shaded color, and they typically provide some extra useful information. So a sample would be, there is a record group called Vickers Prerogative Ireland Wills. And in its little summary block at the top of that record group, it lets you know that the records here are just an index, because lo and behold, they also have issues with fires. In 1922, poof, the wills went up. So those summary blocks will give you extra information, because I have noticed from time to time in those summary blocks, oh, these are index cards. We filmed the first page of the index card was filmed, but the backside was not, and then they were destroyed. So very frustrating for researchers, but again, very important to look at those summary blocks. You can also refine your results. Again, very similar to Ancestry. You can look on the left-hand side menu when you're in your results list, so that you can focus down on, oh, maybe my relative that I'm working on, there's maybe records on, like 11 records on under military, or public records are 58, or so on and so forth. So you can narrow down to find more specific information. Whether it's for MyHeritage or Fold3 or Ancestry or any of the other databases, I definitely encourage all of you to contact your local public libraries or your local state libraries to see what type of access to these resources and perhaps others that are offered to you as either a resident or a library card holder, because there's probably a lot of good database access that you have. Now, at the Library of Michigan, what other kind of open databases do we have for researchers like yourself to come in and actually view? Well, one of them happens to be Library of Michigan Digital, which is lmdigital.libraryofmichigan.org. It is our digital portal. It is a growing collection, and it is your one-stop shop for Michigan government, law, and legislative information. Now, I say that phrase right there because this Library of Michigan Digital is at first started out as a database called Governing Michigan. And we created it because we kept getting so many questions from the governor's office, from legislative offices, from state employees, from different law firms, in state and out, asking for the same types of information. So, heck, we decided let's go ahead and scan a lot of these materials and make them available so that we can point researchers to them. Well, last year and in 2018, we decided to revisit Governing Michigan and make it more inclusive of other Michigan content, and it became Library of Michigan Digital, and it kind of went live in January or February of this year. So it's been a little bit slow in trying to grow and put more collections on this platform. But there are a few that we have that are non-government information. Two of them are below there. One is called Pave the Way, the I-496. It's a scrapbook collection that details, because this is the anniversary year of the creation of I-496 and its destruction of the different neighborhoods through Lansing. So it's during this time that the R.E. Olds mansion, from Oldsmobile, the R.E. Olds mansion was torn down, and a lot of other wonderful buildings in Lansing, Michigan. There is also the Capital Idea collection, which is our collaboration with the Capitol historian and her staff at the Capitol, where they have, over several decades, collected historical information on the different Capitol buildings and the different Capitol grounds, as well as a postcard collection about the Capitol buildings and the Capitol grounds. So it's a good partnership, and we hope more will follow. We are in current preliminary working environment with another smaller library in Michigan as they begin to digitize their material and their photographs that we hope to load into Library of Michigan Digital hopefully later on in 2021 as they proceed through their grant project. So definitely always check back to see what is here. So if we were to go to Library of Michigan Digital, this is the entry page that you would see. And on the right-hand side, you will see several navigation buttons. There is the About button that will help, that you'll get information explaining the purpose and navigation of the site. There is the Topics and Collections button on the right-hand side that will get you to the search box, which just happens to be at the bottom of this screenshot, because you can sort of see that scroll bar there on the right-hand side. There's the Contact button, so you can send us questions on using this site, or maybe report an error if you see a problem. And just to reiterate, I mean, this portal is here to help connect Michigan's past, present, and future. And the collections are arranged in these tiles. And you may have seen other different websites from either libraries or different historical organizations shaped in a very similar pattern. And as you can tell, in front of you, a lot of it is government-related information. So you can see, legislative and statutory materials, administrative law, case law, and so forth. But we also have a growing collection of Michigan charters, codes, and compacts. We receive a lot of questions regarding those types of materials for different towns and villages and cities. We're scanning them and putting them available. But then, lo and behold, there's Pave the Way, the Oldsmobile Expressway. That's that 496 project. And then right below, you have that Capital Chronology collection at the bottom left-hand side. Sorry for chopping off the name a little bit at the bottom. That I mentioned about the history of the Capitol buildings and grounds. And then there's that Capitol View, which is the postcard collection. And on the very far right, Michigan maps. So we do have some maps that we have scanned and put up there. So we're trying to grow this collection these collections as time goes on. But if you're searching for items in LM Digital and you complete a search, your results list is going to look a little bit like this. You're going to have the title, publisher, and different field names at the top. And if you want to view an item within the database, all you have to do is click on the title. Now, depending on the collection you're in, the other fields, there might be different names and you might have different content within those fields, like location and date. For the postcard collection, this is a collaborative project, as I said, with the Capitol historian and her staff. They're the ones who are going slowly through and adding more data to these fields. So as you come back and look at, this particular collection, these fields will probably have more information as time goes on as they proceed through their project. But let's just say I click on that second item, Michigan Capitol Postcard Collection. I'm going to get an image would come up when whatever image title that I would click on. So it happens this is the image that we would see. And just a few things to point out as you navigate this database. On the right-hand side of the image, you may see a scroll bar because it might be an item that has more than one page. Towards the bottom of the image, you might see a page count. As you see, it says page 1/2, because it's a postcard, there's a front and back. If you are using this collection or any collection in LM Digital, and the image doesn't load up, that is what that green download button on the right-hand side is for. If you can't see the image, click on that button and it will force the image to load on the screen for you. If you need more information on any of the items that you're looking at, towards the bottom, you should see the items detail button. Get a little more information about the particular item you're looking at, and a transcript of the item. It could be an OCR transcript, or it could be a typed transcript. So from things like images or postcards, it's going to be probably a typed transcript. So besides the LM Digital, what other kind of databases that are open for the public to use? Well, we have the Legislative Biography database, and that's another content block in that for the public tab. It's towards the bottom, and it covers the members of the Michigan legislature from the first session following statehood in 35 through 2018. And we're, gearing up to, once the election is done, to gathering all that information about any new members in the legislature. And why could this be useful for my family history research? Well, as it mentions on the left-hand side of the slide in front of you, you could find some family biography information, maybe some birth information, death, burial place, maybe names of spouse and children, the committees they've served on, and the sessions they served in. So there could be a wealth of information that you can find. So maybe through, let's say, family lore, like, great uncle George was supposed to have been, a legislator. It 5-10 minutes out of your time to search this database to see if he or she appears. Now, if I were to click on that content block, this is the entry page to the legislative biography database. And on the left-hand side, you will notice there's a couple different buttons. You can click on Search Legislators to get some search fields to type in a name. You can also click on View All Legislators and shuffle through all the different names. Or maybe you simply know, well, family history tells us that so-and-so served in 1920s in the legislature. You can go and view the sessions by years and say, oh, okay, well, 1920 is what I'm looking for, and then scroll through the names to see if your ancestor appears and see what kind of biographical information the database covers. As you can imagine, this is a continually ongoing project. Additionally, we have our Michigan Authors and Illustrators database. Again, it's another content block. And like the legislative database, you might be able to find some vital information, birth and death information, perhaps names of parents and children and spouse. You may even get a partial biography. You're definitely going to probably see a list of the author's writings or the illustrators' books that they have illustrated. You probably could also get a membership listing of the different writing and illustrating groups that they belonged to. Something to please note that it is mostly a self-reported database creation, but again, there could be some good information contained within this Michigan Authors and Illustrators database, particularly, again, if there's some family lore or some history that you know of in your research that these various ancestors, they're supposed to be, a writer or an illustrator. Again, definitely worth, 5-10 minutes to explore it and see what's there. This is the entry page, just like the legislative biography database. Looks very similar. So that on the left-hand side, you have your quick search button and your advanced search to get your search fields so that you can input the different names and give a look-see. But who knows? Maybe you have a relative or a friend who is a Michigan author. Well, you have the inclusion criteria and the submit entry. So pass the word along, because we're always looking to add information to this database so that we can provide access to it for those researchers to look for information, or if you are just looking for something to read, during the winter. You never know. Maybe good for a book club at your local public library. Now, ending the online resource component, I always like to end with the searching tips, because there are so many different databases, out there. And always, reiterating, always be consistent with, names and spellings. And then also, as we all have done probably many, many times, all the different alternative spellings that are always out there. And then also when using whatever database you're looking at, being familiar with how it works. Are there any wildcards, question marks, asterisks, or Boolean searching, so that you're using that database as efficiently as possible. And always, definitely, if you have questions, contact your local public library or even your state library, because they may have some training or some help to provide, perhaps, to help you get the most from the database. I will also say, definitely contact local public libraries, because just like you have seen with our legislative biography database, the Michigan Authors and Illustrators, there's a lot of good work going on at local institutions. They may have homegrown databases that could benefit you in your family history research. Two random examples. Up here in Michigan at the Dexter Library in Dexter, Michigan, they've entered a partnership with the local newspaper to digitize it. The last that I know, it is a internal database access only. But again, definitely contact that local area to see what they do have to offer. I also tell researchers when I'm working with them to take stock, before using a database of, the information you have, what questions you're trying to answer, what information are you looking for? Am I using, Ancestry, but perhaps I should be using Fold3 if I'm more looking at, say, military records. I also encourage, contacting family and friends. What type of information has already been gathered. We don't want to recreate the wheel if something is already on paper that could help us in our research. The example from my personal life is, on my side of the family, there's not a lot of family history research, but lo and behold, at one of our family reunions about a decade ago, one of my sisters started, talking with I think it was like a third cousin who was very interested in family history research, and we come to learn that their family has made several trips over to Poland to continue their research over there. So if you can, contact those family members and close family friends to see what is known. Facebook family name groups, maybe somewhere out there. Again, what kind of information has been done? Or, when you're speaking with local public libraries or genealogy societies, and the cities that where your family, your ancestors, where you're researching, are there family groups, names that have created like a club that gets together? The best example I can give up here in Lansing is about once or twice a year, the Chamberlain family members get together. Now, I don't know how they're doing it during this time, but I do know in the past they've gotten together. They've it's coffee and tea and some Danish, and they talk about their research and they share work and they help each other. So definitely look for those types of opportunities. So besides the online resources that we have, I want to kind of bring it around as I slowly wrap up today with some more discussion on our print collections. Again, to hope that I encourage at some point a future visit. So like in our Michigan collection, we have state gazetteers. We have a collection from roughly 1860 to about 1930, 1931. Hopefully, some of the states that some of you attendees in different states, hopefully there are other state gazetteers, because I know that the ones in Michigan are just wonderful sources of information, great snapshots of different cities that provide some history at that particular year on the elected officials, the different churches that were operating, the local newspapers, the local society groups that were active. So it's a lot of good information, listing of people and businesses. And also I find it useful because of the advertisement, the business advertisements. Perhaps the families that you're working on, they own this company or that company. If you have access to a state gazetteer, maybe there are the ads for that company, just to give you more rich information about your family story. Definitely searching our catalog, look for proceeding minutes, whether it's a city, a township, county, a library board. We try to accept these through donations and seek them out when possible, because they can provide a lot of family history information from the standpoint of maybe the ancestor that you're working on had a large or deep-seated passion for maybe education or some event. Maybe they did go to a city council meeting minute and speak up on an issue, or go to the local board of education and speak up. So you can get a good idea and feel of what he or she may be like. Just like, using the newspapers, did they write editorials? Maybe they were a teacher or this, or they had or you've researched and learned that there was a important event. Check those local newspapers where they lived, because that was their Facebook, their news, and you might get some good content information about that ancestor. We have a lot of plats, we have atlases, and a lot of subject-focused resources, mining, lumbering, automotive, and a whole lot more, in addition to, poetry and nonfiction and fiction books. A lot to access in city directories and an AV collection. Even a lot of LPs, Michigan artists, and CDs. Here we go. The state documents collection. There's that Pioneer collection that I mentioned before, earlier on. There's about 40 volumes in this collection. And as I said, Harriet Tenney was instrumental in getting the Pioneer societies, because back in the late 1860s, early 1870s, the centennial was approaching, and there was a recognition that the early settlers in the territorial times and in early statehood times, that collective history and knowledge was disappearing. So a lot of second and firsthand accounts were collected. There are some family genealogies within the Pioneer collection. Just a lot of rich information on the early settlers in Michigan. Within state documents, Michigan History Magazine. Up until 2009, it was a state document. So it's not going to appear in our Michigan collection because it was published by the state. And, unfortunately, there's not a very good index to it. But there is a lot of Michigan history information, some biographical different entries on people throughout the history of Michigan. And the Michigan History Magazine is a successor to the Pioneer collection. Once the societies began to close up, the Michigan History Magazine was kind of born and then carried on publishing information on the history of Michigan. Through state documents, whether they're here or maybe in Indiana and other states. Don't forget annual reports. I mentioned the Railroad Commission up here in Michigan, because now the annual reports won't cover every single railroad line, but they do cover a lot of them. And sometimes you can find accident information on particular railroad lines. So maybe you're researching family that, we were told that perhaps so-and-so died or was injured in a railroad accident. Definitely these print resources, if we have one for that particular year, to look, because they do give a lot of detail, the good and the bad, about railroad accidents. Again, giving more content about your family. As I mentioned earlier, we have that the Martha Griffiths Michigan Rare Book Room, and I bring this collection up because it is an amalgam of different resources from the Michigan collection, from law collection, from the state documents collection, that we've brought to the Rare Book Room for several different reasons, whether it's because they're rare or they're just so fragile. We have a lot of city directories up here because there's so few copies left that are available at the different locations throughout Michigan, that we want to ensure that researchers like yourself have access, whether it's next year, 5, 10, 20 years, or many years into the future. And this is just a scatter shot of some images from the Rare Book Room, the display area in particular. As you can see, we've got Carol in the corner getting ready for a display. But within the Rare Book Room, there are numerous collections that can be of benefit. We have the Michigan chapter of the SAR, Sons of the American Revolution. There's about, I think, 38 volumes of these application files, and they contain a lot of information on a particular family member, proving that they can belong to the Sons of the American Revolution. So it's a great resource to use. We have, I shouldn't say a full set, but we have volumes of the GAR Encampment, Grand Army of the Republic, volumes in rare. We have different family scrapbooks that people have donated to us. Maybe you're interested in rock and roll history. Maybe you've got family members that have published in different magazines. So I listed Cream. It was a very important rock and roll history magazine in the 80s and in the the 70s and 80s, published out of Detroit. It's in the Rare Book Room. There's the Michigan Farmer. We have a researcher who comes in when we were open, periodically, about once or twice a month, and she's been flipping page to page because there's not a very reliable index to find the articles that, through her family lore, that I think it was her great uncle or great great uncle published on Michigan farming in the Michigan Farmer, because she wanted to add that to her research. And as you can see in the picture, there's Folio, there are oversized, there are other Michigan periodicals. There's a lot of content here. Again, make sure that you make the catalog your friend so you can see where the items are at. Because as I wrap up right now, I want to, encourage you to call us. We'll answer the phone if we can click on the button fast enough to get it to transfer to our headsets. Sometimes we're not that fast, so we do apologize. And send us an email. Visit our website so you can see those different content blocks and see what information's there. And please visit us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. We're always trying to update and keep some information out there for researchers like yourself, but also for those other population groups, state employees, and the public libraries. So I am going to open it up to questions now. I hope you had a interesting time during the presentation, and I hope that it's been beneficial.